Hi, welcome. In this call, we're going to be talking about the architecture of providing global reactivity on issues and merge requests, a problem that has been on our tables for far too long, but both the groups are trying to align the solutions. So the object of this call is just to briefly discuss potential solutions, exploratory work that we might be doing to begin validating the solutions we have. And yeah, so there's a couple of reading that I assume everybody at least took a passing look. And yeah, for my introduction, this was it. I just wanted to provide a space for us to chat a little bit. There's architectural walkthroughs for issues and merge requests to be sustaining this conversation. So please add your points to the agenda below, and we'll just go one by one at this point. And just so that it's clear, the objective is so that when something happens on the page, it replicates across the page. The idea here is not to address the problem of real time, of having other people's changes come to us without polling. This is just on something that changed for that user to not be inconsistent somewhere else on that page. That's for the benefit of us, but also for everyone watching the video. So yeah, that was my intro. Thank you. So Gabe, do you want to start with yours?
Sure. I guess I just want to highlight where we're factoring on issue fields to support like more extensibility. Long run, we're going to have customizable issue types, and users want to specify which fields are on which types of issues, and so on and so forth. So, like right now, everything in an issue is hard coded, and so to support eventually having custom fields and this sort of configurability on a per customer basis, we're basically having to extract out and isolate each field, like the assigning field, so that all the concerns are in that one field for it. And so yeah, Natalia had some great perspective here, and I just wanted to highlight it and let her surface over her own comments.
Okay, so I've been actually asking about what the widget is and what functionality should we have there, and what do we want to have as well. So basically, first of all, we need to define a way to communicate communication between widgets. Currently, the main way of communication is Event Hub, which is not the best pattern we have, obviously, and it would be nice to replace it. Currently, it's not possible completely, but we at least should start to look the way to do this. The best way probably would be have some shared state, be it Apollo Cache or Vuex. Also with Vuex, we can replicate part of Event Hub functionality with watch and subscribe API. But my main question was about how do we want widget, because we want widgets on issuables, to be, let's say, connected to the rest of the application. And Gabe's idea, if I understand it correctly, is widget defines the functionality for their issuable around. For example, there was an example that we have a quick action for assignees, right, on issue nodes. So if widget is not present on the page, the idea is there is no way to call this quick action, and issuable shouldn't be responsible for this. So node has no idea about this. And I've been thinking about this over the weekend. And I think the best architecture solution for widgets here would be something similar to Vue plugins, where we can define widget as a plugin, and this plugin would provide its own methods to a given application with a condition. Condition on the first stage, this could be just a data attribute. On the later stages, it should be defined with the way that we want to customize a page. It might be JSON or whatever. I'm not sure how we're going to define the structure with the widgets, but anyway, there should be a condition when we display this widget, and when the widget is provided on the page, we could just inject the methods of this widget to, for example, to the nodes application. This could be done with old functionality with extending Vue prototype, like Vue plugins on Vue to do, or with provide inject. And what basically I wanted to have here is our component widget, whatever it be, it could be application or Vue component, is defining external interface. external methods. And this external interface will be triggering internal methods of the component. I understand how this sounds for people who are Vue experts, but this is how Vue plugins work. This way, for example, if widget is provided, the node could be triggering a quick action add assignee provided by this widget, and widget would be handling everything from this point. If widget is not provided, we would be simply return instead of this method. So something like this. Still, widget should be connected to the common state, some kind of common state anyway. And I believe we should decide what kind of common state we should have for our pages.
Thank you for that. Definitely a lot to dissect there. Anybody has thoughts to add?
Yeah. So Natalia, even with that approach, I think at minimum, we're going to have to get on the same page in that every widget, again, at minimum, would have to be in Vue. So I'm wondering if we should get a line there, right? Or would your approach, because I think that's where we've had a bit of the delay in moving forward on kind of a shared architecture, in that we're still trying to account for some of our like Haml views, our jQuery views, of course, our Vue views. Should we get on the same page and at least set the initial goal of, like, at minimum, we're going to have to get everything out of Haml and into Vue? I see head nodding. Andre, what do you think? Like, is that something we want to, because we wouldn't even really be able to, or is there a way, and do we want to build a way of making sure that we communicate with our legacy Haml views in this new framework or architecture?
So I can step in there. I want to make sure that it's clear for everybody that we're completely on board with Vue, on Vueifying everything. Plus, we're completely on board with the path forward being GraphQL. Like, we love it. We love that scenario. However, our day-to-day activities on code review is bound to a very, not legacy particularly, but a very complex Vuex application that is battling with incredibly hard performance problems, whether it's regarding rendering on the browser, whether it's memory usage. So we're trying to bring that down as much as we can, and creating some sort of hybrid approach where we have Vuex and Apollo Cache, GraphQL and REST endpoints at the same time for the same application as it is, which is not very stable, is something we want to avoid. That's just for the baseline conversation. Now, the rest of the page has a bunch of components, and I'll share the screen for the sake of capturing it in the video. So we have a bunch of components across the page, and not every one of these is in Vue. And some of these are simple enough. Say if we want to convert the milestone to Vue, it seems simple. But then again, if we start doing them right now on our own, it would probably collide with your work on the widget for the extensibility that you're doing. So what my opinion here is, I don't want us to stop pursuing an ideal path with Vue, but if we find that solution, we can find a way to support library agnostic components. We'd be able to ship changes to users much sooner. So say one of the things we're looking to do on code review is start experimenting with a quick solution for the status of the issuable, the merged label at the top. And we're going to be trying to tie it with the merge request widget. So doing that will provide us some experience and some knowledge on that, but we want to make sure that we find a way to move forward that is yielding results to users within a short time frame rather than a year time frame, for example. And yeah, that would be my thing. Like, I think whatever we come up with, it could have an ideal path, like integrated with Apollo would be the ideal, because that's the way forward. But if we have some way to support some backwards compatibility, way of communicating, so a way of reading and writing to that central state, that would allow us to move much quicker. And the thing is, it should be simple enough so that we don't have to dedicate like 5 points of weight for one widget in a milestone. It should be something like as quickly as like a 1 point of weight for each widget. Otherwise, then it's no point. Yeah, that's my short answer.
Andre, I think you are mixing Apollo with Vue Apollo here, because we are already combining Apollo with Vuex. Apollo on itself can be just a GraphQL client, and it's completely agnostic, and we can use Apollo on vanilla JavaScript on our HAML parts as well. We don't need Vue Apollo to subscribe to this. Of course, making HAML part a widget with methods that it provides, it's hardly possible. But if we think about a part of the application that needs to be subscribed to the store and listening to this store, we can do this with vanilla JavaScript and Apollo client on itself with Apollo Watch Query, for example. Or if you want to have a shared state as Vuex and you want to check Vuex on HAML, this is also possible with Vuex watchers and subscribers. So I think it's not a major blocker to still have a shared state even outside a few parts of the application.
Right. Thanks for that. I was definitely too bound with that couple, Vue, Vuex, Vue, Apollo. So thanks for that. That's definitely useful to keep in mind. More thoughts or
okay,
Gabe?
sorry. Yeah,
No.
Natalia, just to, sorry, real quick, clarify on that point. Natalia, are you saying that there is not, because my main concern is there's a point that like building to support HAML becomes more work than it's worth. Like there's a point there where it makes sense just to go ahead and refactor the components to use Vue. Are you saying though that it's not going to take a whole lot of effort in order to be able to support all the way back to HAML components or widgets?
As for widgets, I don't think HAML widget is possible, because widget should provide some functionality to the application outside of it. But if some piece of an application just need to be listening to other widgets via shared store, we can take this as a temporary solution to just subscribe these parts to the shared state. So for example, if we have in some part as a HAML, but we need to, for example, re-render this part if our shared state changes. For example, if I change assignee and some HAML part should be reacting to this, this is doable without introducing Vue to this part. We can just subscribe to Vuex or Apollo Cache, whatever.
Yeah, just one thing. We're talking about a HAML, but a lot of HAML is a mix of HAML and JavaScript. What I think is valuable here is exactly if we have a hook to that central state, each case or each bundle of JavaScript and HAML will be responsible for updating, reacting to whatever happens on that central state. So I'm thinking about the to-do widget, which I don't think is Vue. I'm just there is a HAML Ruby jQuery. So we basically be like toggling between mark is done or not mark is done or something. So okay.
A small note here, please remember that we will be operating real DOM, not virtual DOM in this case. So this should be really temporary solution, not for years, because real DOM performance is questionable.
100%. The idea here is just to deliver value, but not waste too much time on the real solution, which is viewifying everything. Cool.
And then let's also clarify, just for video's sake, and I know there's been a little bit of confusion outside of this meeting on what we're referring to. When we say widget component, it's essentially, like you said, just a bundle of the view, I guess, within an issue or an MR. So everything you had numbered in your MR architecture meta issue is what we're kind of referring to when we say widget component or part of the app.
I usually go for like an entity on the screen.
Yeah.
Gabe?
Yeah, I think Natalia answered
Okay.
my next question. The other would be, we do have this new architecture and evolution workflow. I haven't done one yet, but this could be a good thing for the front end engineers to spin up. Just so is, especially because it's cross stage. I'm assuming it will also be cross company as more and more stages need to solve these problems. Could help us all stay on the same page in a centralized way. And like we talked about the ideal a little bit, and we also talked about making trade-off decisions so that we can deliver customer value faster, which I don't argue with. But having that ideal map somewhere and then very clear like milestones to help us get there in an intentional way, I think would be really helpful, because I've kind of been shouting from the rooftops about this since I joined GitLab a year and a half ago. So it'd be cool to see it like formalized a little bit. I'm not the DRI, so just a suggestion.
Yeah, that sounds great. One of the things that I think about when we started this discussion is exactly this, like formalizing the process of becoming something that is like a train that can't be stopped kind of thing. It has a frequent rhythm. Deliverables are being assigned on each milestone for each side. And I was actually going to propose making this a frequent call after the new year, of course, like every 2 weeks or something. But I think instead of doing that informally, I feel like, Donald, maybe you and I can collaborate on formalizing this, following this architecture workflow. Sounds good? Yeah, I think that's what you're going to write. Cool. Thanks, Gabe, for that. I actually just saw this today and it definitely sparked something. So good. Cool.
The other thing I was just going to bring up, since we've been working on the plan stage a little bit too, in terms of data flow in OneView, like you can have shared front end state, but we've also been working on getting WebSockets production ready. And I think we're finally unblocked on that. But sort of what we did for assignees, for example, is the assignee subscribe to an issue basically on the server, and anytime the issue changes, server publishes assignee data back to the client. So instead of like when you do the quick action for assignee right now, prior to this, the assignee wouldn't update because there's no shared front end state. But after it, because like basically the one assignee component or widget is subscribed to the server, whenever a data changes, it automatically gets new values without having to like be just on the front end. So I think whatever we build here, however we approach this, like the real-time aspect of it should be taken into consideration. Just because I know on issues, and I think probably on merge requests, there's a lot of desire to have most, if not everything, on the view be real-time. And so it's like just another way to solve the kind of circular data flow that seemed to work pretty well for assignees. So just wanted to highlight that and raise awareness as part of the architecture plan long-term.
I will add, yes, I think in the merge request, we definitely want to make sure everything is real time. We're starting to do some groundwork to prepare the merge request widget. Phil's OKR for this quarter is exactly about preparing the merge request widget state to be in GraphQL so that we can then piggyback on the work that Realtime is doing, working group is doing. So yes, the plan is that. How it interacts with this reality, I don't really know. Does anyone have thoughts? Natalia, do you anything?
You mean on Realtime? I know that is under testing right now to see how it's performance-wise. But again, even if it's GraphQL subscriptions, not a broadcast, we still can leverage Polo Client as a framework agnostic tool in this case. So yeah, we'll see how it goes with WebSockets. So far, it's not ready for the wide use. I think it's running on production, definitely.
Right.
But actually, to have more insights, we should have had Henry on the call. So maybe it would be a good idea to ask him also.
Henrik or Heinrich?
I don't know if he's Henrik or Heinrich.
Yeah, and he responds to both. But yeah,
I hopefully got his name right.
You did.
Be consulted.
Yeah, and I think it also, like our solution, I mean, whether we decide to build, like we should keep in mind that we may eventually use, or we more than likely will eventually use WebSockets. But I think the way we handle that kind of depends on the, like what we decide here. because more than likely, yeah, we're going to use Apollo and we'll be, or an Apollo cache. We'll be able to abstract that out from the plugin framework, and then the either subscriptions or whatever we add on can be added on to that abstraction layer. So I don't know how much we have to really build in mind for WebSockets right now. But yeah, it is good to keep in mind that eventually we are like it's close to being deployed to production, and Scott can actually probably talk to this a little bit because he's working on it with Heinrich. But we are definitely going to get there eventually to using WebSockets for real time.
Do you want to add anything, Scott?
No, not at the moment. I actually haven't been involved in the WebSocket. I was involved in the initial implementation, and then I know Heinrich worked, I believe, with Natalia and another front-end engineer on changing a bit of the implementation. So I'll need to, before I say anything, confirm that I'm on the same page.
Okay. Yeah, I think everything you've been saying, I think I kind of agree. So there's no need to. Good news that it's not really attached to the WebSockets. That way, it's not a lot of tight coupling there. Okay, so this one has been answered. We can skip. Gabe, yeah, we can skip this one. So should we? Yeah. Let's just vocalize it.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just suggesting that we should consider eliminating front-end overlapping solutions and overlapping API solutions in the same views. Just going back to our boring solutions value, when I read the article that's linked there, it really just talks about being intentional. When you do introduce something that is an overlapping solution with your existing tech stack, to be intentional about setting a date where you want to commit to being done migrating off of it, so that there isn't overlapping solution. It explicitly calls out the fact that when you do have these overlapping solutions, then you have to create additional technology to make those overlapping solutions communicate with each other, which then just leads to defects. And so I think we talked about that already, but that was what I was going to ask the question about if we hadn't gotten there by now.
I'll actually add a few thoughts there, because I think we haven't had the opportunity to talk after that issue. And one of the things I wanted to make clear is that's why I was mentioning that thing at the beginning, that we don't go into this supporting backwards compatibility or like an overlapping solution lightly. But on merge request code review, on code review, and specifically on the merge request application, we don't foresee a future within the next year that will have the merge request diff steps in GraphQL. One of the things we have been briefly discussing is a potential, but this is just very bare bones, is potential to start a exploration of a PWA for code review from the ground up, thinking about offline experience first, think about all of that, and then developing the GraphQL endpoints for that. But then again, it's definitely not even discussed, so it's not in the foreseeable future. So that's why we want to make sure that we support other technologies and impact first. But this is very, very important and relevant. So thanks for raising that, because we definitely don't want to put ourselves into a corner that we now have to maintain 2 bundles of messy code. And thanks for typing that out. It was challenging. A bit of rambling.
To piggyback, could I raise? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't have time to write. To like piggyback off the piggyback. Something that we noticed when we were converting components in issue, and then we have overlapping components in merge requests and other issuables, is that having that like reusability first mindset, so that we can plug in these components at a future date. The problem that we would run into is how the store was architected in Vuex was different depending on the issuable. So how you'd access the same state, let's say confidential, or what was another one? I guess confidentiality in Epic versus issue was different. So then the watchers would have these like, what issuable is this logic, which then made the overall implementation a little bit brittle. So if we decide to move to an Apollo client cache implementation, then we'll probably have like a separate single source of truth solution in the meantime while we phase out the Vuex, but just to keep in mind, like, I think we need to identify the commonalities of the pages and issuables in terms of state management. And then as we start building the reusable components, keep that in mind so that we're not like putting logic in all of these different places to support the different types of issuables. I don't know what that would look like, but it's just something to, it's like notes, for example, right? Notes are real time using polling, and then, but how I access a note in an issue is different than merge request. So it's like, I don't know at what point we're putting the cart before the cart before the horse. So yeah, just something to keep in mind as we move forward.
One of the things I was going to mention too is like merge requests have branched quite a bit from issues and epics, but sort of one of the ideas with issue types and this whole like component thing that we're exploring and plan is so that we could write a widget or component that would work across all issuables, including merge requests, without having to write a bunch of custom code. A good case in point would be reviewers in the sidebar. Like issues need reviewers, epics want reviewers. It's the same thing. So I'm wondering like if it would sort of make sense to write a standard shape for state that all issuables follow, right? Because there's going to be attributes that could be different, but like an assignee is going to be on a merge request. It's also going to be on these other things, and it should basically register itself in the state the same place or in the same way as everywhere else, sort of like what Scott was saying. So like that way, when there are differences, it's almost like each widget or component like registers its own state using a normalized syntax. So when I built a lot of front end, that's why like I care about some of the stuff. I would always normalize my store using a normalizer that Dan Abramov wrote, which was really nice. But it basically had an array of IDs, so I could do lookups, and then it would actually store the objects in an object tree, so that I could then like pluck them out and pick them out and stuff like that. But just thinking about solving that problem, that would also probably make us more efficient too, especially as we wanted to contribute or collaborate with each other's code, because we wouldn't have to go in and like groke the weird differences in different state objects across different issuables if it followed the same basic pattern and shape. That's just a suggestion to solve some of these problems, I think.
Okay, that's definitely going to be part of the conversation. Sorry, Natalia, go ahead.
Good thing with Apollo Cache is the state is already normalized for us. It's just a small note on this.
Natalia, for the Apollo Cache stuff, so like let's take confidential for as an example, or confidentiality. Would you add the confidentiality to Apollo Cache schema and keep the Vuex ones, or would you at the same time like phase them out and just reference the one in a? Is there like, do you have a mindset of how you'd like to phase that in or out?
I see we're on time, so let's discuss.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Separately, just not on the common.
Yeah, I was just going to say that for the sake of time, I don't want to go over time because we probably have appointments. None of this is incredibly critical, or at least for next week or something. So we can totally pick this up on the next call. I'll move the points to the next one discussion because we haven't discussed all of them. Just for the next steps, Donald, I think one of the things you and I can do is start looking at that workflow, the architecture, and get that ball rolling. And in early January, we'll just pick it up from here and provide a status update for everyone, even if it's just nothing haven't happened, but at least we'll just have a catch up and potentially develop a rhythmic, whether it's 2 weeks or every week, we'll figure it out later. But for now, I feel like this has been very productive. Thank you so much for everyone who attended. And please refer to the Slack channel for any discussions about this. We're all there, I think. So feel free to pull other people in and start threads there. But we will have a more formal place to discuss this as soon as we have that process formalized. Anything before we go?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and have wonderful holidays, everyone. Have a good rest, and I'll see you on the other side.
Sounds great. Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.